talking author interviews, and we have a very special guest today, Dr. Larina Kase. Dr. Kase is the author of Clients, Clients, and More Clients. And before we get to the interview itself, what I'm going to do is just give you a few pointers on the broadcast experience. If you have any questions to ask Dr. Kase, what you can do is to the right of the video is a question form. If you ask your questions there, those will be forwarded to Larina, and she can answer those questions either during a live broadcast, or if this is a rebroadcast, obviously we will forward those to her and she can get back to you after the broadcast with any of your answers. So the format here essentially is interview style. We have Larina in a phone call today, and we'll be showcasing some of the topics. Typically what we do is we talk about the topics around her subject matter. The book itself that obviously we're going to highlight today, you can go out and get that book anytime, so we won't go into too much detail about the book itself, although I'm sure Larina will have some comments to present about the subject matter there. But to no further ado, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pass this on to Chris, who has been reading deeply into the book, and of course he'll have tons of questions to ask Dr. Larina Kase. Thanks for joining us, Chris, and thank you, Larina.
Oh,
yes, thank you. And Larina, Dr. Kase, I'll start out with, and then I'll go Larina. Thank you ever so much for being on the show. We greatly appreciate it. We did have this actually scheduled for about a month ago, and I had the misfortune of having to go on holidays, so I appreciate you actually being able to rearrange your schedule so that we could actually interview you. I was on an airplane, actually, when I was supposed to interview you the first time, but all good.
Oh, good.
All good. So clients, clients, and more clients. And the interesting thing, first off, I love the book, read it. As I was saying to you beforehand, I love the psychology when it comes to sales, marketing, connecting with people, getting more and more into that and what really motivates people. I see you have a few unknown authors, actually, who have ranked the book or put stuff. Michael Port, never heard of him. Meerman Scott, never heard of him. Caldini, never heard of him. Brogan, don't know who they are. Obviously, I'm joking. You got some good high fives and kudos on this book, obviously. And as I say, it's actually very good. Can you just first thing what we do is when we usually start off the broadcast, we let you just give yourself a couple of minutes to tell a little bit about yourself and how people can connect with you or contact you. Website, if you have an email address or phone you want to give out or anything like that, and just a little bit about yourself and kind of how you came about with the book, if you wouldn't mind telling us that.
Oh, absolutely. So my background really is in the world of psychology. My doctorate's in psychology, and after finishing up grad school, I went over to the University of Pennsylvania, where I was on clinical faculty in an anxiety treatment center for a while. Now I'm kind of out on my own in my own business and practice. And what really fires me up, what my passion is helping people to do the things that are difficult, that they might want to avoid because they make them nervous, how to move past that anxiety and convert it to energy to actually achieve those things that are the most important. One area I talk a lot about is public speaking and building relationships to build your business or build your career. And people can learn more about me and my background and my work on my main site, which is just my name. It's larinakase.com, LARINAKASE.com.
Excellent. That's and
I have that website up for you as well. Yeah.
Excellent. So people see what the website is. I'm going to hold the book up one more time so that people can see it. And also, I believe, Kirsten, once we get this live as well, you'll have links through on Amazon or any of the major book sites so that people can purchase
order
it
the
that
book
way.
below the broadcast. Yep.
So starting with that, how did you come about writing the book? I see that you've written 4 books, but this one is, I think very kind of laser focused on getting clients, which I think, a lot of times when we cater to sales and marketing people, especially on the sales side, people are always ask us, how do I get clients? I just want my phone to ring, or I want this, or I want that. How did you get wrapped into this world, apart from the psychology and what you were talking about it?
Well, first, I guess going way back, I actually grew up in a family business, so I've been involved in marketing and business building from a young age, and just seeing how obviously, if you don't have clients or customers, you don't have a business, and that's where a lot of business owners and sales professionals, that's where anxiety comes from, is am I going to get new business? Am I going to get new clients? And unfortunately, once that anxiety kicks in, it actually prevents us from doing the very things that we need to do to help us to grow the business and to get new customers and clients. So, so I kind of tied all my different areas and personal experiences together in this book focused on getting new business.
I know that feeling.
happens all the time, especially, we ride the roller coaster of being entrepreneurs ourselves, where it's like things are great one day and the next thing you go, oh, how am I going to get more clients here? How do I actually how am I going to pay my mortgage this month type stuff? Oh, yeah. The first part of the book is really talking about making the right connections, I think. And how is it that you go out and how do you, if you wouldn't mind sharing your insight on this, how do you find the right people to connect with, and how do you go about meeting these kind of people?
Absolutely. So we know, connections are everything, and the people that you connect with are going to determine whether or not you're going to get new referrals. The thing that I like to think about best in terms of ideal connections are referral partners, or the people who are already in front of your ideal customer, client, audience, that by being able to connect with them mentioning you, they already have credibility, they already have leverage with that market, so you would be able to kind of capitalize on their existing relationships rather than really starting a relationship from scratch. So that's really my favorite person to connect with, is a potential referral partner.
Gotcha. So you go find these people. By the way, I love the fact that's what I was reading. I've got in my notes here, referrals. The statistics on referrals. I'm a stats guy at heart. I'm almost Rain Man-ish about this stuff. But literally, I think Word of Mouth Marketing Association talked about this, and I think John Jantz talked about it in the referral engine, that only 18% of companies have any sort of a referral program, or salespeople have any type of a referral program that they use. Yet 65% of all sales, or 66% of all sales, are done by word of mouth and referral. So it's huge opportunity. So I'm really glad that you actually got into that in the book and started talking about that. Now, how do people find those right referral partners that they could go at? Where would you go looking for these kind of people, do you think?
I suggest really working backwards. So start off by thinking about who is your ideal client or customer, and then ask yourself who is already working with that person, who's already has an existing relationship with that person. So for example, let's say that you are a financial advisor. You might say, okay, my ideal client is a young professional, like da-da-da-da. Well, who's already working with them? Maybe it's an accountant, maybe it's an attorney. You just really want to think about what type of professional already is in front of that client and is someone that you could develop a relationship with, someone that's kind of on your level. You want to be sort of at the same level as your referral partner.
Okay. That's interesting. I always just walk up and down the malls trying to figure out who the heck I could talk to. By the way, I'm joking. Obviously, why are my sales not happening? I'm just joking. I think one of the neat things that you actually put in here as well is describing what you do. It's on page 17, and you're referencing Michael Port, which, by the way, he has Book Yourself Solid's an awesome book too. I love that one as well, and he did the foreword for your book. But I find it painful when people tell me what they do. Like, it's, what do you do? And all of a sudden it's like, it becomes white noise to me sometimes. What kind of suggestions can you make for somebody to grab that attention? Because that is part of the book as well, obviously, grabbing attention, or at least getting someone to really remember who the heck you are. What would you suggest for someone?
Well, the goal is always about knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to and what would interest them. So launching into a pre-rehearsed, little speech about what you do, disregarding who you're talking to, that's when people start to tune it out. So if you already know that the person you're talking to, is a parent or into soccer or whatever it is that they're into, you can kind of tie it together. And one of my favorite things to do is to use a metaphor. So to be able to say, like, oh, I know that you're really into, horseback riding. Well, my business, it's like when you learn to ride a horse, and blah, 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 blah. And so all of a sudden you've captured their attention because you're referencing something that they're naturally interested in and drawing a parallel between that and your work. And that's much more fascinating than saying, like, I'm a financial advisor and I help businesses, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
It's interesting because then when you get to know the person, and also part of the book that you have in chapter 3, I'm kind of jumping around because there's so much information that you have in the book. And the other thing I like about it is the fact that you break it down into, action steps as well for people to take. But, you connect with that person, but also, and this is coming up more and more, and this is the psychology behind things that I really start to like, is the engaging people with stories. We had Ben Zolden and Michael Bosworth on last week, and they wrote "What Great Salespeople Do." I'm looking up the shelf. There it is, and it's all about storytelling. And you talk about that, and it's taking more and more prevalence in sales, is what it sounds like, because people don't necessarily come from, what was it, left brain thinking? I'm putting my psychology hat on. It's really bad because I've been out of school for like 25 years, but they're not. Their emotions are playing more and more into it, as opposed to when everyone used to think it was logical to engage or sell. What's your take on using stories, obviously, in either connecting with people, but also potentially in that sales aspect too?
Stories are my favorite way to engage attention and emotion, because it really goes back to our DNA. We've learned history through storytelling. We are automatically interested and captivated by stories. So a good story should be just like a novel or a movie. It should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. In marketing, it should be fairly concise. And ideally, if you can tailor that story to your particular audience by tying in key things that you know that they're interested in, that's going to make it even more powerful. But yeah, stories are my favorite way to capture attention and engage emotion in marketing. And
I think it really it wraps people in. It's a great way to differentiate yourself, because I really truly don't believe a lot of people are using stories and I'm talking more specifically into like a sales cycle and stuff. They're not using the stories. What I see is a lot of people just hammer people on, logic and stats, I guess is the best way to put it. So,
right, and we're naturally very skeptical about stats. People do throw stats around without, they'll say 7 out of 10, and you're like, really, where did you get that from? So statistics tend to trigger that mistrust part of our brain. Stories tend to trigger that relationship building, that trust part of our brain, that credibility, because if you got the specific story about how you helped a client in a similar situation, that helps the person to say, oh, wow, you really know what you're talking about. I can see how you really can do what you say that you can do.
Interesting. Do you know that 82% of people don't believe stats? That's a joke. We like to joke around. But
I don't know the data, but it is high.
I always say that when people say stats, we've had people on before talk about that, stats, and people don't believe stats, and I always throw that sort of thing around, saying, 82% of people don't believe stats. The other thing too is what you go into, and one thing I really thought was neat was you talk about the online world here and starting to build established credibility with people. We get approached all the time because Kirsten and I work predominantly online, but we also work the offline world for marketing and helping people with their sales and marketing aspects. But can you give your thought or your overview on establishing credibility, especially online nowadays, because that's very important.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that right now a little bit of a problem is that we're tending to get so focused on the trends and, using social media and the tools, and sometimes losing sight of what is the bottom line message. So just like offline, just like sitting with someone face-to-face over coffee, it's the same idea of focusing on relationship building. So the number one most important thing is that you're aware of what your brand is. What's your message? What is it that you're trying to convey? And making sure that your presence everywhere online is consistent with that message. Because if something is inconsistent online or offline, that is another major red flag for people not trusting you, not trusting your message. So knowing your message, presenting it consistently, and of course engaging conversation are some of the big things to be looking at online.
Interesting when you say talk about know your message. So I'm going to ask you, as a psychologist, how does someone hone in on knowing what their message is, or how would they be able to craft that and ensure that it connects with the appropriate audience? Because you keep talking about know your audience, and I think that's wonderful, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah, because I think a lot of times people make the mistake of crafting their message around themselves, which is great because, of course, your message has to include you, but it has to be about your audience. So really your message is ultimately about how you're helping someone. So, for example, let's say that you have a realtor. Are they really in the business of helping someone buy a home? Or let's say that you specialize in vacation homes. Well, maybe you're in the business of helping people create memories and have time with their children and get away from their regular life. There's a deeper message to it, and you want to know exactly how your client or customer feels, because that's what you want to tell your message around.
So I got to figure out how to craft my message again. Then, there, Kirsten. No, I'm joking. I've got a good online presence. One of the things also in the book that you talk about, and I thought this was awesome, was, and I'm jumping around, and I'm really actually, not honing in on the book per se from A to Z or from front to back. I'm just kind of jumping around to different parts of the book, obviously here, but.
Sure.
The one thing that I thought was awesome in there as well, and everything's awesome to me, by the way, is the follow-up process. That is, and I often tell people this, that apart from asking for referrals, the other aspect is the follow-up process. And that is, there's two things I'll start out with here, is that, at any given time, only 5% of people are, typically up to 5% of people are looking for what you have. That means there's 95% of people that don't, are not in buy mode. Plus, there's also multiple touches that have to happen with that sort of thing. So you often, in there, you're talking about how to create a follow-up system, but kind of give us your feedback or thought, I guess, around why follow-up is important, and kind of how to set up that system, kind of as you explained it in the book as well, if you don't mind.
Sure. So as you mentioned, follow-up is so important because people aren't always ready to buy what you're selling. They might be ready, 5 months from now, 5 years from now. And that, especially if you're selling a relationship, especially if you're offering a service, people need to be able to feel like that relationship is developed, and they're usually not ready after meeting with you for one time. It's kind of like if you go on one date and ask someone to marry you, it's probably jumping the gun a little bit. So people need to build that relationship over time in order to have that trust and that commitment level to go to the next step and purchase from you. So the keep in touch process is so important. And it's so difficult for so many of us because of many factors, one of which, of course, is disorganization. Another is some of us are just motivated by the initial, we like that initial contact, but then we kind of drop the ball. And often it's a matter of just not having the right system in place and knowing how your potential client or customer likes to be contacted. So sometimes people might say, okay, I'm going to do a follow-up email, and they email, 5 times a week, and then the people unsubscribe because it's too much for them. So you really have to create a system, again, that's based on the needs and the interests of the people in your audience, that's going to provide them with ongoing value so they look forward to hearing from you and don't see every contact from you as, oh, this person's looking for a sale now, so now they're reaching out to me. You really want to be providing ongoing value.
Now, part of your system, would it be wrapped around mostly email follow-up, or do you make phone calls? Do you potentially have, I found this article and send it off to them in a letter? Or is it more, once again, know your audience, work it so that it works that way?
It is. It is knowing your audience. For example,
sorry about that.
Some of my referral partners that I work with, the way that I keep in touch with them is maybe twice a year going out to lunch with them. So it's not about constantly, doing the email marketing thing. It's about twice a year, a lunch type of thing, and maybe here and there sending them an article or something of value. For others, people who maybe you're less in touch with, people who have not yet become a referral partner or a client or customer, you might be more focused on your email system and making sure that you're giving them great content, great tips, great value, twice a month, that kind of thing. So it's about knowing what that person's needs are and also kind of knowing where you are in the relationship, if you're building the relationship or if you're maintaining the relationship.
And your magic recipe, I love it. It's system plus timing plus value plus personalization equals great follow-up on page 86. Yeah. I'm not going to get you to go into that because I want to jazz people up and get them to go buy your book, obviously. But it's a great, it's a lot about what you just talked about, but it kind of goes into a little bit more detail on that as well. So it's, you know, a lot of what I hear is know the audience, but also have. And when you say audience, are you talking more referral partner, or are you talking like end clients who actually end up doing business with you, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. As I mentioned earlier, I really enjoy focusing on building the referral relationships because you'll be in front of more people that way than one-on-one with clients. But it really is both, depending who you're mostly getting referrals from.
So I mean, the premise behind the book, like I say, is a lot around the referral. The referral angle is the easiest way to get your foot in the door, and also build that established. Have someone else build the trust and credibility, I guess, for you beforehand. Is that correct?
Exactly,
Okay.
Exactly. And the thing that I think is so great about referrals is that ultimately people are going to refer to those who they like. So yes, you have to have the credibility, you have to have proven results, you have to be offering something of great unique value. But ultimately, if somebody enjoys you as a person, they're going to be much more likely to think of you, to remember you, to want to refer to you, to want to help you out and drive business your way. So what's great is that you want to be able to connect with people on a personal level, and sometimes I like to say that sometimes people let their professionalism kill them. So your professionalism can kill you if you're being too formal, too professional, too salesy, too trying to convince somebody. You're going to miss out on the opportunity to build that relationship that actually is more likely to lead to referrals.
Well, I think one of the things that you talk about too is it's not all get. It's the give mentality too, right? Exactly. In order to get referrals, you probably have to give referrals, right?
You have to give whatever it is that your referral partner is looking for, and that's part of where that conversation comes in. So your referral partner might be totally swamped. They might not want new business. They might want something else. They might simply want a resource to send people to because they're so swamped. There's many things that they actually might be looking for. So I really suggest as you're building that relationship to ask the question, what are your goals in your business right now? What are you looking for? So that way you can give in the way that they most likely want to receive.
Gotcha. So you don't want that mixed message going out there that all of a sudden you're kind of questioning why you're trying to send them so much business and the person doesn't want to do business with your buddies and stuff like that. So
it's possible. Absolutely.
I can imagine.
Yeah, because great referral partners are the ones who are busy and have the business to send to us as well. So they might not want new business. They might want a different type of business, right? So they might not want everyone who might come their way, but they might be really looking for a new type of client or customer that you could help them to get in front of. So you want to ask them specifically what it is that they're looking for.
Gotcha. Was there any questions have come in yet?
No, I'm just started to review it. If anybody has any questions, please post them in the question form. Obviously, if this is recorded, those will be forwarded to our guest today. So please leave your questions anytime. I'll be monitoring the question form.
So, Larina, when I look at the book, obviously, and you read it and you go through it, and there's a lot of great points in there, but literally what it comes down to is what I'm gathering from you. Know your audience, try to find the right referral partners, and I may be off mark, so please let me know if I am or not, but get the right referral partners, kind of like follow that golden rule, understand to treat others how you'd want to be treated, understand what your referral partners want, and then build a process around this as well. So it does come down to you've got to create your own type of process that works best for you to make this work. And you give away enough tools or tips and tricks in the book, which I'm holding up once again, to get people engaged. How would you suggest someone kind of get started? Because a lot of times when we talk to people, they're like, how do I get started on stuff? And it's always about taking bite-sized chunks and just kind of layering it in over time. What would you suggest would be a great first step for people to start looking at?
Well, if we think about the goal of beginning with something that's a little bit easier to build the momentum up to something that's a little bit harder, let's say, for example, that one of the best marketing strategies to build your business is to be getting out and giving talks in different places, but that's also the most intimidating thing to you. Well, maybe you start off by having one-on-one meetings because that's a little bit less intimidating, but also a great marketing strategy. Maybe you build up to having, giving a presentation, but not at the most intimidating venue, and you really work yourself, you kind of pace yourself, just like imagine you were training for a marathon. You wouldn't try to run 26.2 miles the first day. You would really pace yourself. So you want to be pacing yourself based on how difficult something is, how much time and energy you can realistically devote to it, and when. You really want to have a strategy for all of that so you don't feel like you're just kind of forcing yourself, but rather you're letting the momentum glide you through the process.
Gotcha. So you start layering it in bit by bit, figure out what works for you, and go from there. And as I say, one of the things that I found very interesting was the follow-up system, just because so few people actually do that, and they don't leverage it to their advantage. And I think that's key and critical, obviously, because it's where most of sales happen are further on down the road. And I think you just talked about it, as it could be 6-7 years down the road. Like an average realtor, for example, I think the average house sells every 7 years. So, you've got to create that cycle where you're going to be in front of people every 7 years, all the time, up to 7 years. Did you get a question?
Yeah, I have a question here for Larina. I give all the time, events, free lunch, constantly, and people just take my advice and move on. How do I monetize on giving away information?
I'm sorry, did the person say that they're constantly giving free
I give all the
lunch,
time,
that
events,
kind of
free lunch, constantly.
Yeah, so the risk there is that when you're giving away things for free, then people assign a value of free. They don't assign a high level of value to it. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's great to get out there, get the exposure, get in front of people. On the other hand, the risk is that people see it as, well, this person has time to give all these free things. They're probably not that busy. They're probably not that good. That kind of thing is a real risk. So you want to be really strategic about anything that you give for free, that you're really couching it in that it's because it's in front of your ideal target audience. There has to be a real compelling reason to do something for free, in my opinion, something that's going to be time-consuming for you. And you want to make sure that as you're, for example, let's say you're giving a free talk, which can be a great thing to do, you want to make sure that you're leveraging that by not necessarily making it into a sales presentation. It has to be all about value still, but you're able to show the audience how you create value for your clients and customers. For example, one thing that you can do is to give a lot of great examples and tell stories to illustrate your points. Again, that's showing specifically how you help somebody without making it kind of a salesy thing. It's really just sort of illustrating the points, and the person listening can take that away and use that on their own, or they can realize how you could help them to achieve a similar benefit.
Good advice.
And then, of course, the follow-up.
Obviously, yeah. And the follow-up's important, is that you get the list of people that are attending your event. So what's your feeling, this is my question here, what's your feeling about running networking events?
I think it's great whenever you are the host of something that elevates your status. So I always say with networking, your goal is to either be the speaker or be the host, so that your status is elevated. People are automatically more interested in and attracted to you. It's kind of like if you go to a cocktail party, the host is the one that everyone sort of, it's kind of built around the host, and the host is the one who works the room. And I think it's a great thing, and that way you can also think about who you can invite, who you can introduce to one another, knowing that, again, one of your goals is always giving, adding value to people, knowing that the law of reciprocity will come back to you. So you're selflessly giving and connecting people. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a nice position to be in.
Interesting. You know what, I was just thinking, I was looking through the book here while you guys were talking, and you talk about testimonials. And that's another underutilized, what I would consider to be marketing/sales skill/tip that people get. It also builds credibility. And obviously your book, there's a lot of stuff about building credibility and making sure that you're kind of, you look good in the eyes of whoever you're working with, or who people may be working with you. How would you recommend people go about getting testimonials?
Well, the thing about testimonials is that the power of the testimonial really comes from two things. One is the person who gives it, and the second is what specifically is said in that testimonial. So if, Timothy P. says, this person is great, that's not that powerful of a testimonial. Rather, if the person giving the testimonial is in many ways psychographically and demographically similar to the audience receiving the testimonial, that testimonial has a lot more power. So you really want to try to target the person who is giving the testimonial to be very similar to the person who's receiving the testimonial. And then the testimonials that are really effective are the ones that give data. So we've talked about how data is often suspicious. However, if it comes from a specific person whose full name and company is listed there, it becomes not suspicious, it becomes trustworthy, and it becomes really powerful. So testimonials that have specific results and data are much more powerful than the ones that are more general.
Would that be like getting testimonials on a book from David Meerman Scott and Robert Cialdini and Rogan? That's you practice what you preach, so let's put it that way. That's good. You know, a lot of times I come across websites and you get these people, it's like JB from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan said this, and it's like that builds zero credibility. I mean, it probably builds more trust than not having someone on your website or anything like that, but
I don't know. It might backfire because someone might automatically think like, "Oh, do they really?" I mean, it depends on the nature of your business. You know, some businesses where the clients do need to remain confidential, you know, it makes sense that you're not going to include their full name, but sometimes it does trigger that mistrust,
suspicion,
which is a real risk.
Yeah. One of the tips that I use with my clients is actually we do video testimonials so that you can actually see the person live talking about it. And also, you know what, videos also remember. Anyone who watches this show will probably go boo hiss because I say this all the time, but videos remember 8 times more than written, so you stand a far better chance of actually you know, getting that testimonial remembered and associated with you if you actually put it on video, obviously. So all that.
Absolutely, and the that's a good example for the question about giving out free talks and that kind of thing. Let's say you give out a talk with all this great value and people walk away like they're so excited. Why not have a camera there and just take some quick clips if people ask for their permission to include it as testimonial? That way you'll have them right in the moment of the energy and they'll be, you know, really enthusiastic about the talk, and then you'll have you'll get a great endorsement right afterwards, which will help you in the future.
Is there a question, please?
Yep. I do have another question. This one is in the chat room. Hello, Larina. Hello, Chris and Kirsten. My question is about the ominous topic of, in quotations, cold calling, and then shudders. I'm not a fan, but my boss is. I am young sales professional in wireless phone sales. Oh, dear.
Your boss, let me guess. The demographics of the boss right now, someone who's like 55 or 60, and it worked for him back in the 70s, so it's got to work for you in this day and age.
And he's holding up a phone. He's saying, "Pick up the phone." Right? I remember those days.
As we joke, but we feel your pain, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Keep the question going.
Okay, so this one says, where my target audience is medium and enterprise business, I believe cold calling is a dead method of prospecting. Where spending 8 hours a day cold calling is a waste compared to other new modern methods. What is your opinion or advice about cold calling? Oh, I'm looking forward to this one.
Oh, it's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, if we think of the process of relationship building, cold calling to try to make a sale is like, you know, calling someone up and asking them to marry you, right, that you've never met before. It doesn't really make any sense. However, sometimes you do have to start somewhere. So cold calling to initiate a relationship in a way that's going to provide value to the other person and little effort on their part is great. So, for example, let's say that you were to call and say, oh, you know, I've got this something that person could really benefit from, an article or whatever. I wanted to drop by your office and drop it off for you. Would that be okay? And they say, sure. And maybe they don't have time to meet with you, but you drop it off and they have a chance to look over it. And then the next step, you know, you're sending an email and you follow up. So you sometimes do have to start from scratch. But to think of that initial call as a sales call, I think is really difficult and even if not impossible, especially in today's process.
It's going for broke, building. Right?
Yeah, exactly. You're ending the relationship.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I have the same opinion as you. Is if you're starting out and you have nothing, you got to start somewhere, right? And it takes a bit of time to build up relationships and credibility. You know, even though I'm not a big fan of cold calling, the process I would use is get a piece of information, get it into a letter, send it off to the person, target them properly, and don't sell them anything. Invite them or give them information, just as you were talking about. Invite them to a seminar, invite them to a session, invite them to a networking event, whatever. Right. And you just follow up, and that's where you start. You say, hey, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to give you value. And hopefully a percentage of those people will actually take you up on that. And that's where you meet them, and that's when you start building the relationship.
Exactly. And this also goes back again to the knowing your audience and knowing what their needs are. So if you're just making the assumption that they need something and you're kind of pushing it at them, they're going to resist that. So being able to really say, like, I've learned a lot about your company, and I see, being able to show that you've done your research, you've put your time, and you're not just sending out these blanket emails or blanket, making blanket phone calls, that you're really interested in them for a specific reason, that because they could benefit from what you're offering, that really shows something that people might be willing to take that moment to put their attention into.
And this is what I love about chat questions, is they're actually interactive. So Eric, this is again from Eric. Would you say that the first call would not be a sales call, but more of a ask for a meeting call to build that relationship? Not sure about asking for a meeting necessarily. What do you think, Larina?
Well, again, you want to remember that everybody is so busy, and for most people, our most precious resource is time. So if someone's calling me up and asking me for my time, my answer is going to be no. But if they're going to say, I wanted to send over some information that I thought would be of interest to you, I'm going to send that off, I'll follow up. That's up to me. If I want to review it, it takes 5 minutes. But to commit to a meeting is a major commitment. So you really have to start off with lower level of commitment and time and energy and effort and move up to higher levels. So first they have to understand why they might want to be interested in what it is that you're offering, and then you move up to the
also
next
is, I guess, to do your homework and understand who your target is. Now, in this case, Eric would have to do research about the enterprises he's dealing with, but identify who you're selling to and then offer them something that could benefit them and just give it to them.
You know what? Another one I would look at, Eric, just as a pointer here, is LinkedIn is a wonderful tool for doing stuff like that. Go out and connect with the right people on LinkedIn. And the other thing, too, that when you see is when you connect with certain people on LinkedIn, you'll see who they're connected to, and always leverage that person as a in to get to the person. And you dramatically increase your odds of actually being able to connect with that person.
Yep.
That's such a great suggestion, because it's for someone to accept a LinkedIn invitation takes basically zero time, energy, effort, commitment. So it's a great,
and it's quite amazing the trust that I get off that. What I do always is the immediate connection I use on LinkedIn is to offer people the opportunity to leverage my networking events. So that's essentially how that's my giveaway. And I get almost a zero turn down on that. So you might want to try something like that, Eric.
We got to be cognizant of the time here, because Larina has another interview coming up. So Larina, we always ask our guests one question upon leaving or getting close to the end. So, and I think I already know what the answer for this one is, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What is the one best piece of advice that you could give? And that could be broad stroke, or it could be wrapped around as it relates to the book. What is the one best piece of advice that you could give as it relates to either business world or the book itself?
I think the most important thing for us to do when we approach our marketing and sales is really to be very clear on what our strategy is. Sometimes we get so caught up in the doing, I should be sending out email, I should be doing this, I should be doing that we're just sort of taking this haphazard approach, and there's no system to it, and there's no strategy behind it. There's no understanding of exactly how it is that your potential client or customer or referral partner is going to benefit from that and how it's going to build the relationship. So begin by asking yourself a question along the lines of, what need am I really filling? Am I sure about that? Do I know exactly what need I'm filling because I've talked to the audience? What is that need, and who needs that, and how can I start to communicate with them? So really kind of take a step back, start at square one, and then build up your systems in a very consistent way so you have the ongoing follow-up and you can build those relationships. And I say that it's much better to commit to one or two marketing strategies. Let's say your primary strategy is email marketing and your second strategy is networking events. So your primary strategy is social media and your secondary strategy is speaking. But rather than trying to do 50 things and not really getting any results from them and just getting yourself tired and burned out, frustrated, really go to the strategy and consistency and commitment to a couple, follow through on those, and then you'll start to see the results. And you can always add in down the line.
Great piece of advice. Now, Kirsten also, while we were talking,
he got
another one that he thought was a good question. So he's going to ask you, and I know we got to be very cognizant of the time.
And
here.
You have about 3 minutes. So I would say this one kind of relates, because I'm curious too. Can you give us an example of a storytelling scenario? So
don't you have a couple of little kids? You can tell stories like
yeah,
that, right? I'm
Chris
talking to Larina. I think
Chris
Larina's
is
got a
actually
couple of kids.
right
So.
on. It's that and it's about the personal touch, right? So, Larina, what do you think?
So I mentioned earlier I love to use metaphors. So, for example, in the work I do in helping people confront their fears and anxiety, I like to tell a story about, I say, do you know the story of Little Red Riding Hood? Do you remember what happened? And someone's like, oh, yeah, like the wolf dressed up like a grandmother. And I was like, yeah, well, that's sometimes what happens with our fear. The fear comes in and tries to pretend like, oh, I'm here to help you. I'm just a grandmother giving you cookies. But really, it's a wolf, and it's going to like jump out and kind of ruin our efforts. So we have to look for all those times that those excuses come in where we feel like we're trying to help ourselves out, but really we're just sabotaging ourselves. So that's one of the things that I specialize in helping people to uncover and come up with a plan to address. So you want to think about, something that really people can connect to in sort of a visceral level. I love using fairy tales and metaphors and things that people sort of know from way back that connects to what it is that you do and how you help people.
And open up a little bit of the vulnerability in your own life is another tactic that I've heard from our last speakers, actually.
Yeah, just talk about your about your vulnerabilities, and it actually lets people's guards, it takes people's guards down and stuff. I'm going to hold the book up again. So there we are. Clients, clients, and more clients. You can't get any cleaner than that, can you? So it's
to the point.
It's pretty bang on, right? So, but Dr. Larina Kase was our guest today, and we greatly appreciate her time, and the giving nature of the information that you shared with us is much appreciated as well. And for anyone out there, grab the book. It's chock full of so much information, action steps, how to do things, bite-sized chunks as well. And how to layer things in. LarinaKase.com, and I put the link in there. And as well, if you're going to watch the rebroadcast of this, the book is available. The book is also available if you want to buy it. At the top, you'll see the authors section. You can pick to purchase directly from Amazon right in that order form. Thank you, Dr. Larina Kase. We really appreciate your time today in sharing some of your great ideas with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was great speaking with both of you.
Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone, for attending, too.
Thank you very much for attending. Cheers.
Larina, just stay on for a couple here. Okay.
Sure.
Tell me when we're off air.
We're off air.